Welcome to What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we are going to be talking about how your spouse's anger is ruining your marriage. I know a couple of weeks ago we talked about anger and how to manage that in communication. We are going to dig a little bit deeper today and try to understand what that's all about, what's happening in them versus us, and maybe get some ideas on how to show up different. Nina, I know that when anger is in the room, usually there's fear also in the room, whether it's on the person that's angry's part or our part. And so so I think for me, when that happens, it's really hard to show up in a way that is respectful to myself, respectful to the other person, usually because I'm triggered in that moment. Um, you know, what are maybe some things that will help in terms of their behavior
Mhm,
and what's happening with them that might help, me
mhm.
on the receiving end or anyone else on the receiving end, um, be aware of.
Yeah, that is definitely a thing. How do we help the situation?
Mhm.
And the problem with getting triggered in that emotional response is it shows up looking like anger, but there's something underneath it. It's really a secondary emotion. And there's fear. Most of the time, it's fear underneath it. And it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, whether it's the husband or the wife that is angry. It's a secondary emotion for either one of them. Men get a bad rap because they're not allowed to feel anything. As big boys don't cry. As little kids, they don't get the emotion coaching that little girls do. Well, not all little girls get good emotion coaching, right? Because their moms can't handle it either. So those outbursts, the violent, aggressive kind of communication that comes out is scary to people. So you have the underlying fear that starts that, right? Makes us take something personal. So it's fear that causes that response, and then we or our spouse does this, thing that's ugly and terrifying, and then the person we're talking to is also now afraid, which is great, right? No. And then they respond, they don't respond, they react
Right.
in exactly the same way. And so when we're talking about how do you help that, you got to stop the cycle. And it is a cycle. It is a cycle. That the first piece of it, when I recognize I'm emotional, I need to shut up. I mean, for real, for myself, when somebody else is emotional, that's time for a timeout.
Hmm.
That's a pause moment. That's a, can I step into this and put my hand on your shoulder kind of thing? And hey, are you okay? But if they're really bent out of shape, that doesn't work, right? And so you got to protect the relationship. And so this conversation, hey, I love you. I want to talk about this when we can both be calm, and you're out of here, right? Out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think it's also important to note that there has to be an awareness that that person really is feeling a pain or some kind of hurt, or maybe, like you said, fear that's
Mhm.
underneath that anger. Just having that awareness, I think, is also helpful. I know for me, I haven't always thought, that wasn't my first thought, that, oh, that person's actually hurting, one of the things that I'm working on now is having that awareness, in order to help facilitate my behavior, which, is the next point, is,
Mhm.
the response. There's response that we have to this behavior, whether it's walking away, whether it's moving in closer, is really, really important. Um, is there anything else that we might be able to do that could help facilitate a better outcome?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're not in a toxic relationship, if this react, respond, non-response experience, right? It's just all reaction. It's like World War III in your home. This is not possible. But as you grow in your own maturity, as we do, me too, okay, the more I like healing prayer experiences for this kind of stuff,
Right.
because it uncovers what's at the bottom of this. What's at the root of this overreaction I'm having, and then I can remember when fear gets off the table. Then we can interact in all sorts of different things in a totally different way. We know what to do. I do a lot of work with speakers, and most people are terrified of public speaking. And every now and then they do a survey, and more people they're more afraid of speaking in public than they are of death itself. And so that basically means that you're more afraid of giving the eulogy than being in the box at the funeral, which is just kind of mind blowing. But the more you do that kind of thing, the more you develop some skill in that area, the more you get to what is this about. And 100% of the time, fear with speakers is I'm thinking to myself, and am I going to be liked? What are they going to think of me? It's all about thoughts about ourselves. And that's what generates fear. I don't know what to do. This person said this thing and I'm taking it personally. So I'm feeling judged, disappointed, attacked, accused, all the stuff that's in there. You get this stuff out. And you know me, I'm a junkie for healing prayer. I want the Lord to clean that stuff out of me. But when we do, then our brains work, and you can watch something that's nuts and you can just think, okay, what does this person need right now? And then this is in a non-toxic relationship, okay? Because the more healthy you get in this stuff and the more skills you develop, you can move your whole relationship into a different space if that other person is not stiff-necked and is somewhat willing. Okay, you can move that. And so then what happens is you have this incredible opportunity for intimacy. And it's hey, baby, can we pray about this? And then, you can ask permission to ask the Lord to reveal what's going on. And I know couples that do this together, and it's pretty incredible the connection that they have. They long for intimacy relationally. And not only do they get it relationally, but they get it spiritually too in those moments, which is just mind blowing. Right.
Right. Yeah. And that's ultimately the goal, is to take conflict and turn it into connection. And so the challenge is knowing when those tempers flare, knowing when those feelings that are not so nice come out, knowing what to do in that situation to help guide the conversation to connection. And I think that that's what's so special and wonderful about what we do at Greater Impact, is it really teaches us how to do that and do it well. And I just want to say, as far as inner healing prayer, I can't say enough how important that is, because when you say toxic, I think about things like codependency and how we're not able to separate our identity from the other person's identity, and inner healing prayer is the way to do that, so that when you know those conversations happen, that you don't find your identity in what's coming at you and what's being
Mhm.
said, and vice versa, and you're able to just really show up different. So I know that's a different topic we'll talk about later, but I want to just emphasize that is absolutely essential in showing up different.
Can I share the outcome of one of those?
Yeah, I'd love.
It's kind of related. It is, but it's about a horse thing.
Oh,
So I, I've been riding horses a long time. I still get scared sometimes, and I was dealing with this fear issue. So last week I got some coaching around this fear thing, and I won't go into all of that, but the outcome was totally different than what I've experienced before. I've been having this issue with this wonderful horse that I'm riding. His name's Charlie, and Charlie's incredible. He's really smart, and he understands human language. And so if you tell him, or if the trainer you're with, or your friend, you're riding your friend, and she's like, "Oh, you want to canter?" He's like, "Yes, we're doing it now." and he knows what that is, right? So he speaks the language, he's ready to go. Well, the problem with that is that he's supposed to wait for me. Matter of fact, I'm supposed to be the leader in this relationship, because that's a safety issue, right?
Right.
First and foremost.
Right.
But in horses in general and in all successful relationships, you've got this mutual submission thing going on and this mutual respect. So if he was going to get startled on a trail, I would pay attention to that. It'd be like, what? And if he wanted to turn around and go somewhere, I'd think about that. He usually doesn't fight me on the trail, so it's not that kind of issue. But you know, if there's a mountain lion and my horse knows that and I don't, it'd be wise of me to listen, right?
Right.
And I've actually had an experience like that where I had an argument with a horse until I heard the mountain lion. It was like, oh, I guess we're turning around now. Yes, thank you for telling me that. But what happened today was just the coolest thing ever. I have this healing prayer thing. I work through my fear thing, and I'm like, all right, we'll see, rubber hits the road kind of thing. And we're moving down the trail, and he decides he's gonna like flat out run, run, run. And he's not listening to me like at all. And you think, well, how is that any better? Well, the thing is I wasn't afraid. His behavior is irrelevant. The whole point was he was not afraid. And then I was able to show up in that moment and interact with him with skills that I've been developing, but haven't had access to in moments like that because I've been drowning in cortisol. I've been afraid and stressed. So
Mhm.
I can't access any of that. And I did the next thing. I did, and backed him up, and we did a stop and all this stuff, and not in that order, but it happened and it worked out. And I got back to where everybody was, and the trainer was like, "That's exactly what you should have done." And I felt like, oh, I had this moment. But the whole point of that, and I just sat there and I was like, oh, this is so obvious. I mean, what an incredible thing. We don't even pay attention to it most of the time when we just do the next right thing. But being on a horse and having been afraid I mean, I've been riding for a lot of years. I know what you're always a little bit something because this 1,000-pound animal can kill you basically without intending, but it's dangerous. So you have a little bit of something. And so I had that, oh my word, awareness moment. And then I thought, this is just like dealing with people. When
Mhm.
we work through our stuff in healing prayer, and the big part of this is you got to go take a bold move that walks in that healing. You got to choose, I'm healed from this. I don't buy that lie anymore. I'm listening to the Lord, and I'm going to do this next bold thing that demonstrates I'm not afraid. And so for a lot of people, that looks like stepping into conflict lovingly. That looks like putting a hand on the shoulder when your spouse is losing it. Well, I had somebody wrap their arms around me one time and give me a hug, and I kind of like didn't even know what to do with that. I was so angry, and then suddenly this person's touching me, and I'm like, short circuiting.
Mhm.
But it totally changed everything. And I want to be like that in all my relationships. It's easy to do with kids, little people especially,
Mhm.
harder to do with adults because that fear thing can creep in. But if we get that out of there, man, oh man, changes everything.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is that Charlie's behavior didn't necessarily change. He's
No.
still as big and brash and
Mhm.
as he's always been. But
Mhm.
it was you. It
Mhm.
was the work you did on your side of the street that actually changed the outcome. And you're right. The same is true. If we could just get that, the same is true in
Mhm.
our relationships. It doesn't matter what the other person does, if their behavior changes. If we show up different, then we have the power to influence a different outcome. So,
Yeah. And, people hate when we say that,
mhm,
but, to really dig into that, it basically means this is a bulletproof concept, right? It doesn't matter what they're doing.
mhm,
And you tell that to somebody that hasn't had that experience and they're still in the mental space of, but they're still doing it. And they don't understand that when you level up into the place where it doesn't matter what they're doing, you're interacting with that in a way that's completely different that can then help that person level up, the other person. and their behavior starts to change. And it's not about manipulating others. It's about having a relationship that's honoring to God and protecting the relationship. And so where we might be, if somebody says, well, you're never on time or whatever it is. And our history would be to, well, yes, I am, and then list off 28 times we've been on time. Let's get defensive, shall we? But but if we're leveled up, you're never on time. Well, tell me more about that. It seems like you're something right now. What's going on? And then you can connect with that person
Right.
in that situation. And as women in management, and if you look at the big five, we're more agreeable
Mhm.
than men are, generally speaking. Men generally don't have a hard time going and saying, hey, you were late yesterday, or you missed the deadline for the proposal or whatever. Women struggle with that and will be so indirect that people don't hear what we're saying. And so being able to be direct in that space also is a level up, So with a spouse that can't or won't calm down, then it's I need you to take a breath right now and a timeout. And when we come back, we're going to act like we love each other. And at work, it's, I need you to finish this report and have it turned in on time. And I want to see us be successful here, but you got to do your part. So, fewer words, more direct. And the crazy thing is that's what worked with Charlie too. Fewer cues, more direct. Yeah. Anyway.
That's awesome. Well, I think that we've covered most of. Oh, actually, no. There's one more thing we need to talk about. One of the things that we spend a lot of time in greater impact talking about is boundaries. So, um, how can boundaries help us in those moments where either person is angry? It's always, I find, so hard to know where to start with a boundary. We teach here, start small, don't go
Mhm.
too far, don't do too much. But sometimes it's hard figuring out what that is, what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so um, maybe talk a little bit about that. And it'd be great if you had an example, but yeah, just the idea of a boundary, sometimes people just freak out about. So
Yeah. They need to start in our head, because whatever we're going to think about, and this is how fear needs to be boldly shunned, if you will.
Mhm.
If we've been through a healing prayer experience, and people are out, the debate is on apparently about whether fear is a demon or fear is just flesh. I think it's both. We're told not to fear a lot in the Bible, but the thoughts that we have, those prescriptive, oh, they're gonna do this terrible thing, or this isn't going to go well, that needs to stop. We need to take those things off ourselves, or I don't look right, or, oh, my voice is shaky, or, oh, that's scary looking, or, whatever. All of that needs to go. And instead, we need to choose a mindset as a leader, and what looks like help right now in
Mm,
this relationship. So we don't allow ourselves to have fearful thoughts. That's the first boundary. And
okay.
then the second one, and we don't, I've never said that aloud anywhere, but that was really what happened to me today on the horse. And I was like, oh yeah, this is why. Because the second rule, or I guess it's a rule we have in all of our classes, it's a boundary for all of us. I won't have a conversation when I'm emotionally upset, and that's a boundary. But before that happens, if we back the train up, and when the thought comes, and it did today for me, it's like, holy heck, here he goes. I'm going to die. And then, I literally thought I'm going to die. And then I was like, no, I'm not going to think that. What does Charlie need? What do I need to do here? And so I just like swept it off. Right. And so that's kind of a big awareness that I've had today, but it's what shows up in real conversation,
Right.
versus thinking about myself. And like the speakers, we're thinking about ourselves. We're thinking about what does that person need in that situation. And the whole thing should be about what's good for the relationship.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the, it's okay to have, I mean, anger isn't a horrible, horrible thing unless it's damaging to the relationship. And unfortunately, most of the time it is. There's very few times where there's righteous anger being expressed. And a lot of times it's blaming or accusations, just aggressive kind of untruths, or you always, you never, just damaging kinds of stuff about people's character. None of that should be allowed. We
Mhm.
should never speak it, and we shouldn't allow that into the relationship. And
Right.
so having a boundary of what words are going to be spoken in this space, that's a thing. And the way we execute the boundary matters a lot, because if you act like a jerk about it, you're also damaging the relationship then.
Right.
You have to honor somebody and say, hey, I love you, and I'm thinking we both need to take a break, and let's go calm down, let's go pray 20 minutes and then come back to this. Or, hey, I love you, it's not like you to be all something here, what's really going on?
Mhm.
Do
Mhm.
you feel anything physically? Sometimes I'll ask a question like that because it shifts the brain from the right emotional blah 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 over into the logic side. And it's like, what do you mean, what am I feeling physically? Oh yeah, there's a weight on my chest and a lump in my throat. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's grief. Are you grieving something here? What's going on? I hate seeing you like this. And that's where compassion then comes in, right?
Right.
So
And none of this is easy.
no.
I just want to emphasize, because usually there's emotions involved and somebody's triggered, and so to have that level of control within yourself requires that you have done your work, or some work
Mhm.
to be able to facilitate the conversation in this way. So this takes practice, this takes
Yeah.
leveling up, this takes inner healing prayer, like we said. Sometimes scripting helps as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
Having phrases, go-to phrases to say, which we all need sometimes. I know I need
Mhm.
that. So yeah, it's a process that happens over time that hopefully will help build the connection
Mhm.
little by little. um,
Well, and one thing we need to realize is that just because somebody's angry doesn't mean that we've done something.
mhm,
Yeah, a lot of times, well, if not all the time, people's reactions are indeed theirs, you
right.
know. Yeah. And asking the question, what's going on? And they say, well, I'm just angry at you because you're gonna da da da. Okay, so tell me more about that. Help me understand where and you can't have the conversation that way if you are carrying your own emotions into it. You get cortisol, it doesn't work. But the way to get rid of that is through the healing prayer experiences, and to allow the Lord to minister to those, broken pieces within us, so we can level up and be confident in places where we're previously afraid. It changes everything.
Yeah. So I think we've got some more tricks up our sleeve, so to speak. As far as dealing with anger, the goal again is to get to a place of connection, to build that intimacy that we all want, and have relationships that glorify God. So,
Mhm.
where can people go to find more information about what
Yeah, say it again, sorry.
Where can people go to find more information about this?
So if we go to greaterimpact.org, we have a free ebook, and there's a little free e-course that goes along with it now, a video and all that fun stuff. And you can download it. It's called Stop Walking on Eggshells. And you can pick that up at greaterimpact.org, and it's free.
All right. Thanks, Nina.
Thank you.